This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Russia approves what it calls the world's first coronavirus vaccine, but scientists are worried at the speed of approval. The aftermath of the killing of 19 civilians by gunmen in the DRC's Ituri province. And in our Made in Africa series, we take you to Tanzania to meet a painter whose style of art is called Tingatinga. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. And tonight, I'm alongside Penina Karibe, who has our business headlines. Penina.
Thank you, Richard. And coming up on Africa Live Business, Kenya's Equity Group plans to secure a 66.5% stake in Banque Commerciale du Congo. And South Africa's manufacturing sector declines by 16.3% in June. I'll have the details of those stories and plenty more in just a bit. For now, it's back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Penina. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. So good to have you with us. I'm Richard Nta. Let's begin in Russia, where the country has approved the world's first coronavirus vaccine. The drug, developed after less than 2 months of human testing, paves the way for mass inoculation even as the final stages of clinical trials to test safety and efficacy continue. The urgency in rolling out the vaccine highlights Russia's determination to win the global race for an effective product. However, this has stirred concerns that it may be putting national prestige before science and safety. All right, time now to join our correspondent Julia Chapman live in Moscow. Julia, thanks for joining us. Julia, a very confident Russian president says his own daughter has been given the vaccine. Tell us more.
He did indeed when he announced today that Russia had registered the world's first coronavirus vaccine. Russian President Vladimir Putin said he was so confident in this vaccine that he'd even allowed his own daughter to be inoculated with it. He said she only had a slight temperature afterwards and is now feeling fine and in good spirits. This comes as Moscow's Gamaleya Institute says that their vaccine is both safe and effective, but that's despite the fact that phase 3 of the clinical trials has only just gotten underway, and we still have very few details about what happened in phases 1 and 2. We don't even know how many people took part in those 2 phases, how many have been inoculated by this vaccine, and what the response has been on their immune system. So there's been very little data published, and that has raised big concerns among epidemiologists, both here in Russia and around the world. They say that this is pure propaganda, and it's simply too early to know whether this will work. The World Health Organization says that they are in talks with Russia about this vaccine, but they say any rollout will need to come after the end of clinical trials.
Well, lots of concerns indeed. Julia, correct me if I'm wrong, the plan was to administer the vaccine to health workers taking care of COVID-19 patients before the general population can get the vaccine. What are the timelines in your opinion?
That's right. We have been hearing that healthcare workers and maybe even teachers will be the first to receive this COVID-19 vaccine when it is rolled out. But first, they are planning to finish phase 3 of this trial, and that does involve vaccinating a widespread number, a large number of the population, but we don't know how many. And the Russian Direct Investment Fund, who has been financing this and other vaccine projects around Russia, says that production will be ramped up from September, and by the end of 2020, there could be some 200 million doses produced here in Russia, and only around 30 million of those would stay inside the country. So he says that Russian Direct Investment Fund says that there will still be many countries around the world that are expressing interest and have already expressed interest in procuring this Russian vaccine for themselves. They're already in talks with other countries to be involved in phase 3 and also to even produce the Russian vaccine in their own countries.
All right, Julia Chapman, excellent reporting. Thank you for your insight and analysis. Let's turn our attention to South Sudan, where at least 70 people are feared to have been killed in clashes between civilians and government forces. The clashes took place during a disarmament exercise in Tanj East in Warrap State in the north of the country. Patrick Oyet brings us the details.
South Sudan's government says it is disarming civilians across the country to avoid intercommunal clashes, and what's been going on in Warrap State is part of that process. Warrap State is prone to intercommunal clashes that have killed hundreds of civilians, but this is the first time that the civilians have clashed with government troops. The local authority says more than 70 people are now dead. The government says the clashes are due to a misunderstanding.
It has been contained, this situation. It has not been exceeding up to now. It has been contained. These are our people. And we don't want actually to use the powers that government has, and are our people. And these are the people that we are here. So you don't actually fight with your own citizens using the facilities that you have against your own people. It is not. It cannot happen. But the clashes that happen and misunderstanding that happen between our soldiers and those citizens in that particular area, it was not something that organized so that we can be able to confront ourselves, because we are here to protect them and we are not here to kill them.
South Sudan's government says it is working to ensure that such clashes never happen again.
With this particular case that has been happening in Warrap, in the area of Tony East, between our soldiers and our population in that particular area, there will be a process that will be actually set up in the headquarters here to investigate the root cause of the problems.
The government says some civilians have become displaced from the area, houses have been burnt, and a number of women and children are seeking safety in the nearby area. The disarmament team comprises troops from the police, the National Security, and South Sudan's People's Defense Forces. Patrick Oyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
Still on security matters, at least 19 civilians have been killed in attacks on 2 villages in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The hit was carried out in the Banyali Kilo area in the province of Ituri. Chris Ochemringa brings us more details.
The attack happened in the Banyali Kilo area in the northeastern province of Ituri. Local authorities say militiamen descended on the area and opened fire on civilians and hacked others to death. 19 people are reported to have been killed. Officials have blamed the attack on a notorious militia called the Cooperative for the Development of Congo, CODECO. It's composed of fighters from the Lendu ethnic group who are predominantly farmers. They've historically clashed with a group of herders known as the Hema over the control of land. The UN says more than 600 people have died since the beginning of the year. The clashes have also displaced over 200,000 people in the area. Chris Ochemringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
On to Mauritius, where efforts are underway to contain an oil spill and avoid further damage to the ecosystem. The salvage process entails airlifting the oil by helicopter to shore. The incident caused by Japanese ship MV Wakashio is now threatening marine life.
Fears are growing that the Japanese bulk carrier MV Wakashio could break and dump its remaining cargo of oil and fuel into waters surrounding Mauritius. Some experts predict this could happen within 2 days. The oil spill is near the Blue Bay Marine Park, known for its spectacular corals and myriad of fish species.
It is unimaginable the foul smell, the toxic smell that comes out from this oil, and the high density of the oil makes it very difficult to handle. It gets stuck on the rocks, on the plants, and the mangroves. And we have a big plantation of mangrove, big forest of mangrove all around the East Coast. And these mangroves are nurseries and a very important part of the ecosystem. They are nurseries for the fish population and the different species that thrive within these areas.
And that is an additional blow to the country's ecotourism.
We rely hugely on the East Coast for our tourism industry. Many hotels are found there. Most of our beaches and islets are also on the East Coast, and all of these have now been contaminated. So it looks like we are going to have very, very big a very big impact on our tourism industry because of the spillage. And also, we rely heavily on the East Coast for our fish production, whether it is by farm or with artisanal fishing.
The Japanese vessel had an estimated 800 tons of fuel remaining on board. It was originally carrying 4,000 tons of fuel and oil. Already, more than a quarter of that has leaked into the surrounding waters. Workers and volunteers now struggle to clear the oil and sludge before the disaster could become much worse. French military and technical advisors have also arrived after Mauritius appealed for international help. Chom Gono, CGTN.
Well, at least 13 people are dead or injured, and several others are missing due to torrential rains that have hit southwest China's Sichuan province. 6 of the dead were from the city of Yan, one of the worst hit areas where some 400 residents have been evacuated. In Zhuxiaozhou County, falling rocks hit 2 tourist buses, killing 1 person and injuring 6 others. Heavy rain is expected in Sichuan in the coming days. Well, Beijing's heaviest rainfall so far this year is expected to hit the city on Wednesday and Thursday. Officials have issued a rainstorm alert, and major tourist attractions like the Great Wall have been closed. Residents are advised to stay indoors and work from home. Let's turn our attention to South Africa, where more experts have reacted to the recent sanctions the United States has imposed on various Hong Kong officials. Garth Lapierre, a professor at the University of Pretoria in South Africa, says that no foreign power has the right to interfere in the internal affairs of other countries by exerting hegemonic pressure. He further states that bilateral consultation and collaboration is the way to ensure development.
So this is very much a function, of American weight throwing, America trying to, throw its hegemonic weight around at a time, I would argue, when American prominence as a global power is in decline. And it has singled China out precisely because, China is, to all intents and purposes, a rising power. And I very much see China as a responsible global citizen. It follows the edicts of international law. It is very much a global citizen committed to the multilateral order and upholding the multilateral system, the rules and the norms and the processes that underpin that, and precisely at a time when the United States, especially under this President Trump, has deliberately tried to undermine and erode the legitimacy and the credibility of the multilateral system and the international order.
You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. We've got a lot more stories coming your way. Here's a look at what's ahead. The Lebanon crisis. International organizations warn of food shortage worsened by the recent port blast. And Egypt's iconic Tahrir Square gets a contested makeover.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines.
You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Let's turn our attention to Lebanon, where the country already had an economy in trouble before the deadly port explosion in Beirut. International organizations are now warning that the country could face further food security challenges. Here is Adel El Mahroui with more.
The World Food Programme and UN bodies are warning Lebanon is on the verge of a food security crisis. Last week's horrific port explosion has blasted the capital's main silos, destroying the country's reserves and importation power.
With the financial crisis that was taking place and remains to be in place, Lebanon is not able to get enough dollars to buy what it needs for its food security. And what we're now facing, at least before August 4th, that is before the explosion, is some serious issues about the sustainability of both the economic system from one hand and the ability of that economic system to produce enough food internally.
Lebanon imports 85% of its food. Beirut's port is the biggest in the country. The other ports are about half its size. Officials say that there are no significant shortages registered yet because of the blast.
After the destruction of the port and all our wheat and grain silos got burned, we were afraid that there will be a food crisis, at least in staples. It appears that there are immediate aid from our friendly nations who are sending grains and food on its way now.
We've already diverted a ship. We will have 17.5 thousand metric tons of wheat flour here within 2 weeks, and that's going to put bread on the tables of all the people in Lebanon, and that'll give us a bread supply for 20 days.
Despite the destruction their capital is facing, many Lebanese volunteers are working around the clock to help fill in the food gap. They assemble food parcels containing necessities that could suffice families for 1 month.
The solidarity we've seen from everyone here is beyond greatness. Once people knew we are offering this relief cell, they trusted us and we started getting direct in-kind donation. Everyone is trying to help in the way they can.
No matter how big these ongoing relief efforts are, the Lebanese capital needs more. And because of the current economic crisis, those who are financially capable to support cannot withdraw enough cash from banks. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Beirut, Lebanon.
Egypt's government has been revamping the historic Tahrir Square, famous for political demonstrations in Cairo. The square gained global recognition as the cradle of the revolt that toppled Hosni Mubarak in 2011. The move has elicited different reactions in Cairo. Shaum Gono with more.
At the heart of Egyptian capital of Cairo lies Tahrir Square. The memories of this space run deep for many Egyptians. It is here in 2011 and 2013 that anti-government protesters pushed for the removal of two former Egyptian presidents, Hosni Mubarak and Mohamed Morsi, respectively. Years later, officials have been redesigning this historic square. The facelift includes new lighting on repainted buildings.
It's very beautiful. It has become very beautiful. You can feel that everything has changed, like you're not in Egypt anymore. It's exactly like countries abroad.
It's a good thing, of course. This Tahrir Square is the symbol of the revolution. So it has to be a good thing taken care of.
But not everyone feels this way. Some critics say the overhaul seeks to tighten control of the symbolic public space.
It is a deliberate attempt to say that the state, that what happened in 2011 was a mistake. We can easily erase any traces of it from public memory, and we turn the square into something else.
Archaeologists are also concerned. Two sandstone sphinxes from a UNESCO heritage site have been relocated to the square. There are fears that the environment will damage these antiquities.
Currently, I think that there would be, and there is indeed, a debate about moving archaeological remains and decontextualizing them. And so one is the argument of decontextualization, and then the argument is for the artifact safety. And I have to say that granite is probably going to manage quite all right. However, the sphinxes are made out of sandstone and are a more sensitive stone, especially since the climate is changing and it rains more frequently in Cairo, and there is a lot of traffic and pollution. So I think that that is not best antiquities practice in terms of the sphinxes.
Egypt's Council of Antiquities has said all measures have been taken to preserve the statues. With modern buildings now replacing the old Tahrir Square, a different era of Egypt's history awakes. Cham Hono, CGTN.
And now to our special series, China Africa Idea Lab. We meet a young Chinese man who's been working to keep children in school in Kenya. He was inspired after visiting an informal settlement in the country. Wilkester Nyabwa reports.
Before the pandemic, these were the lively scenes in Mathare, an informal settlement in Nairobi. With the help of the Dream Building Service Association, a non-governmental organization, a section of children were able to get an education and pursue their dreams. But the pandemic has brought new challenges, and once again, these children's future seems uncertain. Chinese student Liu Yimenghan helped to establish the Dream Building Service Association, or DBSA. Yimenghan moved to Kenya with his mother 13 years ago, and as he became acquainted with his new home, he witnessed the challenges low-income households faced.
I got a chance to go to the second largest slum in Kenya called Mathare, and I felt that the situation there was really bad. Roughly 3 kilometers square of area consists of about 500,000 people, and there is no water drainage, there is waterborne diseases, and there is all different difficulties, including the food security.
So he and his friends sought donations from China. They used the funds to build classrooms, offer scholarships, start an annual talent show, and establish a yearly football tournament. And when he realized that many students were dropping out of school, the organization also started offering free lunch at selected schools as an incentive. Though schools are now closed, the feeding program continues.
What we decided is to get the food packages and deliver to the students' family. The reason being that a lot of families has lost their job during the pandemic, and they don't have a source of funds.
The organization has expanded its reach to 6 African countries: Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. However, when the pandemic began, it found itself on the receiving end too. The Kenyan schools that previously benefited raised $100 in support of China.
I got several calls from the head teachers who wanted to support us by getting some fundraising for us to get the masks and some protective gadgets. The strong bonding and the communication made me feel like honestly, I cried on that day because I really felt so warm in the heart.
Through his charitable work, Liu hopes to foster better communication and understanding of the Chinese in Kenya.
African culture is very similar to the Chinese culture, and we share a lot of common things. For example, we do care for others and we do respect our elders. If we are more open-minded and we're more cultural diversified, then we're able to reduce that barrier by improving our language and by improving our minds.
The aim of his organization is to play a role in uplifting the lives of the less fortunate members of Kenyan society, one project at a time. The work that these volunteers have started is even more crucial now in the middle of a pandemic. And though travel may be limited, beneficiaries can acknowledge that the bonds they're forging now transcend borders. Wilkis Anyabwa, CGTN in Nairobi, Kenya.
CGTN Think Tank will host a China-Africa forum with the theme, Discover a Different Africa. We will also bring you coverage of the finals of the Public Benefit International Challenge for Youth, a competition where young people collaborate on solutions to Africa's most serious problems. Catch the live stream on Saturday from 600 GMT on all our new media platforms. Moving on, dogs are known for protecting homes, and breeding them has now become a source of income for young people in Uganda. The growing desire for dogs is also creating more opportunities for trainers. Tingatinga reports.
Patrick Mitala, a dog breeder, knew his golden retriever Vanji would have puppies soon. And they came, 8 strong puppies. It's the 5th litter from the dogs at this kennel. He sells his puppies for as much as $300 each, sometimes more.
I always tell people, even my clients, that don't look at the price, look at the value of what you're taking. One, this person wants a very good dog that will serve 2 purposes in their home: guard and also beauty.
Mitala is one of 20 breeders in Uganda registered with the East African Kennel Club. But with a growing desire to own and sell dogs among young people, many have taken to backyard breeding.
Years back, breeders were few, and at the same time, even the people who wanted dogs were few. Also, the dog knowledge was few. People didn't have the dog knowledge so much. They would just know from the expatriate community that this person has this kind of dog. But as we speak now, a lot has changed in the dog industry. The breeders have become so many because it's also looked at as a business, actually.
The growing demand for dogs has also created more work for trainer Isaac Buga. He charges his clients about $100 to train a dog in basic commands.
Train a dog, it takes like 5 weeks, 6 weeks, it depends on the dog. Because some dogs are slow learners, others they pick up so fast.
The cultural shift towards man's best friend is helping breeders and trainers here earn more. And their greatest joy is seeing their clients happy with their dogs. It's the kind of feeling Deo Matsanga knows too well. He is always delighted to have a dog by his side.
My first puppy was called Max. I loved Max, and it grew up. Into a very big dog, a jolly dog, loving dog, protective dog, and that inspired me to love dogs.
Matsanga says he wants to add at least 2 more puppies before the end of the year. And he'll be spoiled for choice on where to get his next dog. Leon Sanyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
And time now for our business news with Penina Karibe. Penina, take it away.
Thank you, Richard. Coming up on Africa Live Business. Kenya's Equity Group plans to secure a 66.5% stake in Banque Commerciale du Congo. And South Africa's manufacturing sector declines by 16.3% in June.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Equity Group Holdings will pay $95 million instead of $105 million for a 66.5% stake in Banque Commerciale du Congo. Nairobi-based Equity says both parties have taken into account the effect the COVID-19 pandemic has had on economies around the world and that of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Equity has 2 subsidiaries in the DRC, having earlier acquired ProCredit, a German lender now named Equity Bank Congo. BCDC is the oldest bank in the country, established in 1909. Equity plans to merge the DRC's 2nd and 4th largest banks to create a lender with a combined balance sheet of more than $2 billion. South Africa's Sasol has warned it will report an annual loss after a drop in oil and chemical prices. The world's top producer of motor fuel from coal says its headline loss per share is expected to be between 49 US cents and 84 US cents in the year to June 30th as a result of the pandemic, compared with headline earnings of $1.74 per share during the same period a year ago. Lower global chemical and refining margins have dented Sasol's earnings. Another factor has been an 18% 13% decrease in the rand per barrel price of Brent crude oil. The adjusted earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization is also expected to fall by as much as 37%. That's expected to be between $1.6 billion to $2.2 billion. And still in South Africa, manufacturing output fell 16.3% year-on-year in June after contracting by 32.4% in May as the impact of the pandemic continued to suppress economic activity. The output of iron and steel, food and beverages, as well as motor vehicles suffered the largest drops when compared to June last year. While the decrease was larger than any month between January 2015 and December 2019, it was still lower than April and May this year, when factory output slumped by 49.3% and 32.4%. Factory production was, however, up 16.8% in June month-on-month, but declined 30.2% in the 3 months to the end of June. This indicates that factories are slowly upping their production as they try to return to 2019 levels. The coronavirus pandemic has plunged millions of people into poverty, and a majority of them are in sub-Saharan Africa. The World Bank says up to 100 million people could soon fall into extreme poverty. Terry Wangari tells us more.
Amsale Haile-Mariam had an inside view of a richer lifestyle in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa. She used to work as a housekeeper, but the coronavirus has cost the single mother even that meager living, putting that world even further out of reach.
Since the beginning of the coronavirus, there is no job. We are staying at home and have stopped moving out so that we don't get infected. We are living in a state where we are above the dead and below the living. This is not life.
Until the outbreak, Haile-Mariam's daughter, Bethlehem Jafar, was studying for a career in public health. She's been forced to put that aside for now. Haile-Mariam says her hopes and dreams are tied up in her daughter, and that's why she doesn't give up.
So that she doesn't follow in my footsteps and go through what I went through. I single-handedly worked hard to see her go to school and succeed.
And because of the mayhem caused by the pandemic, many more around the world may soon be joining her. The World Bank says up to 100 million people could soon fall into extreme poverty. This is defined by living on just $1.90 a day.
Based on these projections of a fairly sizable economic contraction because of the global pandemic, we indeed expect, or these models expect, for poverty to rise for the first time since the Asian economic crisis in 1998.
A lot of the gains of the last 25 years are going to be wiped out.
More than 736 million people are already in extreme poverty. Half of them are in just 5 countries: Bangladesh, Congo, India, Nigeria, and Ethiopia. But the last quarter century has seen a transformation in the East African nation that is one of the world's economic success stories. Smith says Ethiopia, like many countries in sub-Saharan Africa, is heavily dependent on foreign investment.
They don't have the money they need to both respond to the pandemic, but also stop the bleeding from this sudden freeze in incoming capital and revenue. Bilateral debt service has been suspended through the end of this year, but it's not nearly enough. We need to go through 2021. We need the multilateral organizations and the private creditors to come on board.
How swiftly things rebound depends on how quickly an effective vaccine is found and how equitably it is distributed.
If we see a kind of a normalization of the global pandemic by the end of the year, in which the pandemic is under control, cases are low, there's progress towards a vaccine, I think Ethiopia can rebound quickly.
But until then, things will continue to deteriorate for people like Haile-Mariam. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
In the U.S., lawmakers are continuing to battle over an economic relief plan that comes as President Donald Trump says on social media that his political opponents want to meet to discuss a new stimulus plan. Unemployment benefits for tens of millions of Americans dropped by $600 per week at the end of July. Trump has signed an order in an attempt to restore part of that money, but as our Owen Fairclough reports, he may have created a new set of problems.
Estasha Goodwin managed to adapt her nail salon business after it was shut down when COVID-19 hit San Francisco in March.
I started recently offering press-on nails. They're a full coverage nail tip that goes over the nails that I can design in any art, customize for my clients, and send them with a kit and everything they need to put it on themselves.
But it hasn't been enough. Even when the federal government topped up unemployment benefits with $600 a week, as part of a $2.2 trillion stimulus package.
Honestly, the stimulus goes 100% to my rent and maybe about a week of food. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover my rent here at my salon space. It doesn't cover my car note. It doesn't cover insurance. It doesn't cover a lot of things.
And those extra benefits expired at the end of July.
We do have divisions about what to do.
Negotiations over how much to spend on another rescue package have collapsed, with Democrats demanding more than $3 trillion, Republicans around $1 trillion.
If Democrats are focused on meeting the immediate needs of tens of millions of people terrified about how to pay for their next meal or facing eviction, conservative Republicans are focused on the economic impact of all this spending and specifically an ever-ballooning budget deficit.
It's nearly $3 trillion and counting, and Republicans think a deficit this steep will hamper any economic recovery as well as future growth. They also want to focus on helping businesses and limit financial support for individual states. President Trump has waded into the deadlock, signing a handful of orders to increase unemployment benefits by $400 a week, as well as preventing evictions and suspending payroll taxes.
Will help, but we're not going to do numbers. They talked about a number of $1 trillion. We can't do that.
Yet Democrats claim Trump's actions fall far short of the kind of help Americans need and argue that ending payroll taxes drains money from retirement and medical benefits. Trump denies this, but his orders may be open to legal challenge over the limits of his authority.
They're absurdly unconstitutional.
Arguments that perhaps matter less to people like Estasha, as she wonders how to keep her business and household afloat amid a resurgent pandemic.
Until we get it together, then I really do have to make some really hard decisions.
Owen Fairclough, CGTN, Washington.
Still in the U.S., Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin says companies from China and other countries that fail to comply with U.S. accounting standards will be delisted from American stock exchanges by the end of 2021. Mnuchin and other officials recommended the move to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission last week. They say the aim is to ensure Chinese firms are held to the same standards as U.S. companies. Mnuchin told a White House briefing the SEC was expected to adopt the recommendations. Malaysia may be staring at an inevitable recession and rocked by political uncertainty, with the government clinging to the thinnest of majorities. But its stock market has been surging, with the main index rising around 30% from its mid-March low and far outperforming its regional peers. And in the face of the continuing pandemic, it's Malaysia's world-leading rubber glove makers that have been driving that market surge. Rian Malta reports from Kuala Lumpur.
Malaysia churns out more than 2/3 of the world's disposable rubber gloves. And companies here have been ramping up their production during the pandemic.
The demand has been phenomenal to the point that, our lead time in terms of delivery has moved up to about 6 months to about 12 months. So that is the waiting period. So demand far outstrips the supply.
Glove prices have been rising and manufacturers' profits surging, fueling a buying frenzy on Malaysia's stock market. 2 glove makers have vaulted into the top 3 most valuable companies on Malaysia's main index, behind only the country's biggest bank. Glove makers' stock prices have risen hundreds of %.
Astounding, the way it went up. I think now, thanks to the low interest rate regime,
We saw a lot of people withdrawing their money and pumping into the equities market. The obvious winners will be those directly linked to the healthcare sector.
But a loan repayment moratorium to help people cope with the economic impact of the pandemic has hurt the share prices of the banks, with the construction and property sectors also losing ground. For the glove makers, though, there's still plenty of scope for growth, even post-pandemic, with greater emphasis on hygiene likely to endure.
America has about 150 pairs per capita consumption, if you look at the annual numbers. And you look at China, it's only about 4 or 5 pairs. India is about 3 to 4 pairs. And Africa, with 1.2 billion people, is looking at about 2 pairs.
How long the glove maker frenzy will continue driving Malaysia's surprising stock market run, despite economic and political worries, is less certain. Ryan Meltzer, CGTN, Kuala Lumpur.
That's it for now, but later on Global Business, she is Kenya's candidate to the World Trade Organization's top post. Ambassador Amina Mohammed will be talking to us live on Global Business tonight about her future plans. That's at the top of the hour, and I will see you then. For now, it's back to you, Richard.
Thank you so much, Panina. We have so much news coming your way. Here's a look at what's ahead. Don't go away. In our continuing series, Made in Africa, we take you to Dar es Salaam to meet one of the best painters of a style of art called Tingatinga painting.
My family has been doing this artwork for the past 600 years.
My dream is to be a leading player in Africa in spice sector.
Nobody in the region consumes it. Even me cannot afford the vanilla cooking.
What we've created here is the elegance, the color, the celebration of life.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Tingatinga paintings are a unique and visually stunning painting style that was developed in the second half of the 20th century in Tanzania, East Africa. Now, Tingatinga is one of the most widely represented forms of tourist-oriented paintings in Tanzania, Kenya, and other neighboring countries. Today, let's walk to Tingatinga village in Dar es Salaam and meet Abdul Nkura, one of the best painters within the Tingatinga team.
Jina langu Abdu Amonde Mkura. Nimekuja hapa mwaka 1974 na nilipokuja hapa nilifikia kwa kaka yangu Omari Amonde. Kaka yangu nilimkuta anachora picha za tingatinga, lakini sikufahamu tingatinga ni nini, lakini alinielimisha tu vizuri tu. Tingatinga maana yake kwamba ni mtu mmoja aliyeanzisha, anaitwa Edward Saidi Tingatinga. Yeye ameanza kazi ya kuchora 1968. Ilipofika 72 akafariki. Sisi hapa ni ushirika Tingatinga Society Cooperative. Tumeanzisha na 90 mpaka leo tunakubalika na serikali. Na katika memba wa Tingatinga tuko 52. Tingatinga ilikuja kwamba ni kitu cha kufikiri kichwani. Zamani ilikuwa tunakata sindibodi, kwa hiyo tunakata zile kwa kutegemea size ambayo inatakikana kubebeka. Baadaye tena mfumo wa kuchukua wateja wetu wanaziona mzito, ndio tukabadilisha mfumo wa plough, ili kwa vile mzito kwa kubeba, ndio tukachukua sasa kuwa tunawamba kwenye frame nguo, ambaye material yetu sasa tumebadilisha, ndio haya mnayoyaona madukani sasa hivi. Usanii wa zamani unatofautiana na sasa hivi. Zamani tingatinga hamna kusketch. Tingatinga inakuja kwamba unachukua, unatayarisha rangi, wewe na brushi na ni unaanza kuchora. Lakini unaanza kuchora sio kwa kutazama kwamba kukopi mahali. Kwa mfano kama mimi nimeishi kijijini, wanyama wale tulikuwa wengine tunakutana nao, huyu swala, huyu pundamilia, huyu faru, utachora kama vile ulivyomwona. Hatuwezi kufananisha na kitu, ila tunachukua mawazo ya kichwani. Kwa hiyo mfumo huu umebadilika mara 2 au mara 3, kwa sababu mpaka sasa hivi kwenye tray tunaweza kuchora, kwenye sinia ambaye yeye aluminium tunaweza kuchora, kwenye t-shirt tunaweza kuchora. Kwa hiyo ili mabadiliko haya yamekwenda msisimuko wa kazi ambaye tunazozibuni sisi wenyewe. Mimi ninapenda kuchora michoro mingi sana. Lakini michoro niliyokupendelea sana na hasa kuwa na moyo wangu kupenda sana, mchoro wa tembo. Tembo nimechora miaka 20 zilizopita. Nilikuwa na mawazo ya kufikiria hali ya tembo alivyo. Kwanza tembo ni mkubwa kuliko wanyama wote. Alafu tembo ana nguvu kuliko wanyama wote. Niliwaza kwamba nikiweka tembo niweke mpako mweusi. Lakini kwa nini ninaweka mpako mweusi? Huu mpako mweusi sawa na giza, wakati hamna mbalamwezi, hamna nyota kali, giza nene. Sasa na hii nyeusi na tembo, yeye ni anatembea usiku. Kwa hiyo sasa nilifananisha kwamba wale wakubwa hawaoni usiku, hawaoni mchana. Sasa sawa na inti anaikanyaga tu, bwana wewe twende. Hizi kazi sisi tunabadilisha kila awamu. Sasa vijana wa sasa hivi kwanza wameenda shule, wanataka kwenda na maisha ya sasa hivi digital. Sasa lazima wachanganye zamani mpaka sasa hivi, na ndio maana tunaona picha zimebadilika. Tingatinga imesifika kwa maadili ya uchoraji wenyewe, umekuwa kama katuni na elimisha kama shule. Wengi wametengeneza vitabu, wengi wamefundishia watoto. Kwa hiyo ni moja la somo tingatinga, inaelimisha. Mpango wangu wa kwenda mbele kwamba picha mimi huwa natumia baada ya miaka 3, ninafikiri kuchora kitu kingine kipya. Na muundo niliyechora hivi sasa hivi, ninatarajia kuchora picha ingine mpya, inaitwa, jina la hiyo picha inaitwa zamani mpaka siku hizi. Na matarajio yangu hiyo picha itakuwa zaidi ya picha zingine zozote zile nilizoanza kuzichora kwa wakati.
And we are not done just yet. We've got your sport news coming up after the break. Here's a peek at